Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day to join me. This is video 3 of 4 in my recap and reactions. I'm doing relentless rundowns on every single divisional game over the weekend. In this video, I'm gonna look at the Tampa Bay Bucs and the Los Angeles Rams, that Sunday afternoon game. I'm gonna talk about offensive, defensive, overall views, the coaching, the special teams, what we saw, what we can garner from what we witnessed, and how it affects them moving forward. I'm gonna give you my full opinions on it. If you disagree with any of my takes, please drop those comments down below. I wanna be able to engage with you. That is why we do it. If you are new to the channel, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please consider liking and subscribing. Your support means the world to me and it helps me out a ton on my journey to my first 200 subscribers. With that all said, done, and out of the way, let's get into this relentless rundown. This game featured two high-powered offenses, which always meant that a shootout was coming. It just took one of these two teams a little bit of time to get there. It was a roller coaster from start to finish, and my expectation was that it was going to go down to the wire. While I was spot on in that prediction, how it came to be was something that nobody could have predicted. My biggest questions coming into this game for the Bucs: could Tom Brady work his magic once again with that depleted wide receiver core? And on the Los Angeles side of things, would Matthew Stafford be able to continue his torrid pace after plastering the Cardinals during Wild Card weekend? Let's start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on offense, and it was all about Leonard Fournette early. He opened the game with a bang, taking his first 2 carries for first downs to start it. It looked like the Bucs were gonna be rolling, but Brady looked really shaky early on through the air, and the first 6 possessions yielded just 3 points for Tampa Bay. They missed an opportunity to make it 17-6 when Ryan Succop's 48-yard field goal was wide right. Brady threw a pick with 2 minutes to go before halftime on an ill-advised throw into double coverage and looked like a shell of his former self as the Bucs went into halftime with a massive deficit to overcome. They weren't able to get any momentum until about 3 minutes were left in the third quarter when Succop was able to connect from 31 yards out and he made it 27-6. Their first touchdown would come minutes later after a turnover when Leonard Fournette ran it in from a yard out. It was the first of his 2 touchdowns on the day. His second would tie the game with under a minute to go, but it was not enough. Fournette had 51 yards on 13 carries, averaging just under 4 yards. He added 56 yards through the air and gave a solid effort in his first game back from injury in over a month. Big Mike Evans was electric and caught the biggest ball of the day for the Bucs, a 55-yard strike where he beat Jalen Ramsey one-on-one with under 4 minutes to go to pull Tampa to within a score. He was the best option that Brady had, and it showed as he saw a whopping 16 targets. He was only able to catch half of them, however, and he compiled 119 yards as he battled double coverage most of the day. Rob Gronkowski tried to relieve some of that pressure, but he was only able to catch 4 out of his 11 targets, and the 2 of them combined for 204 yards. We now get to Tom Brady, who had a day to forget, and the stat sheet here does not tell the full story. He was off target for much of the day, but I believe a lot of that can be attributed to the pressure that he was facing. He rarely had time to fully set his feet and step into his throws, and the pocket collapsed quickly on almost every play. While he threw for 329 yards, which looks great, it took him 54 throws to get there. He had 1 touchdown to go with his 2 turnovers. He certainly did not play his best football, but he played decently when you consider the circumstances. It was a heroic effort from him and the rest of the team to come back in the first place, but the ending has to be extra bitter considering this performance. He finished with a QBR of just 14, which massacred his previous low total of 49 on January 1st of 2010 against the Ravens as far as playoff games he's played. Finally, we get to the offensive line for Tampa Bay, which was an absolute dumpster fire. They gave Brady no time for much of the day. They were absolutely dominated up front, and I think that that was the key and number one reason that Tampa got behind so early and was unable to turn it around fully. To the other side of the vault and Tampa's defense, it was in shambles early on. They could do nothing to stop the onslaught from LA. One of the most egregious plays came on 3rd down and 20 on the Rams' 3rd possession. Down 10-3 with some momentum after getting a field goal and then a sack, Tampa Bay gave up a 70-yard bomb to Cooper Kupp that went for a score. It was an unacceptable, complete breakdown in coverage against one of the game's best wideouts. To make matters worse, they committed their 2nd defensive unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on the Rams' first 3 drives, showing that they were getting beaten not just physically, but mentally as well. They were able to turn it around in the second half by forcing a ridiculous 4 fumbles, the last one coming with under 2 minutes remaining. It was a special play from Ndamukong Suh that allowed the Bucs to be in position to tie this game up. After they did just that, however, disaster struck. The first half Tampa Bay secondary decided to return to the field, and with 35 seconds remaining, facing a 2nd down and 11, the Bucs left Cooper Kupp wide open for 25 yards, and they also allowed him to get out of bounds. They then one-up themselves one final time by giving Kupp the entire middle of the field to work with for a 30-yard strike that ended up sealing the game. How you leave the Triple Crown wide receiver open so many times is beyond me, but it deservingly cost the Bucs a chance at overtime. The front 7 was incredible. They held the Rams to under 2.5 yards per carry as a team. Suh played out of his mind. Besides a bonehead unsportsmanlike penalty that he got early on, he finished the game with half a sack and 4 quarterback hits, the latter being half of the team's total. Lavonte David also had an unsportsmanlike penalty. He tried to make up for it with 11 total tackles and a single tackle for loss. The issue, of course, was that secondary. It had been all season for the Bucs, and that continued here. They gave up big plays and chunk yardage on the regular, and only thing that kept them in it was the Rams turning it over at will. As we get to the coaching, there are a few things that I want to discuss. First and foremost, Tampa Bay flat out did not come ready to play in this game. They were getting beat up on both sides of the ball up front, and they could do nothing to slow the Rams down. The Bucs made a ton of critical mental errors, especially in the first half, where they kicked the ball out of bounds, not after 1, but after 2 of their first made field goals, and they had 3 unsportsmanlike call penalties in the first 20 minutes. To put yourself in that kind of a hole so early due to avoidable mistakes is a death sentence. Bruce Arians did show a willingness to leave it all on the field as he went for it on 4th down and 9 late in the 3rd quarter with the ball on LA's 29-yard line. With the Bucs down 27-6, I guess I didn't really think that they had another option. It deserves recognition nonetheless. The down was converted on a 14-yard completion to Scotty Miller, and it led to a touchdown, allowing Tampa to pull within a pair of scores. In that same vein, however, I did not like his decision to go for it on 4th down and 14 from LA's 36. The chances of completing from that distance were minimal, and at that point it was only a 2-possession game and there was 14 minutes left in it. I would have much rather tried to punt and pin the Rams back inside their own 10, and they ended up missing on the conversion anyway. On to LA, and that offense came out hot and could do no wrong. They scored on each of their first 3 possessions. It was 17-3 before the Bucs even knew what hit them, and Stafford had over 100 passing yards in the first quarter. He had over 200 through the air by halftime, and the only blemish on LA's sheet in the first 2 quarters was a fumble inside the 5-yard line by Cam Akers as the Rams built a 20-3 lead that should have even been bigger. They pushed it all the way to 27-3 midway through the 3rd quarter as Stafford found just enough space at the goal line for a quarterback sneak score. The only thing really that stopped the Rams was themselves. They could not seem to get out of their own way or hold on to the ball. It was such an epic self-destruct that it was almost comical, but they had such a stranglehold on the game by that time that they were able to hold on. Matthew Stafford was absolutely brilliant. He threw for 366 yards and 2 scores in addition to that touchdown on the ground. His 121 QB rating was almost 50 points higher than Brady's. He successfully spread the ball around, finding gaps in that Bucs secondary, and he made them pay. Cam Akers has to be thanking his lucky stars right now, as his 2 fumbles nearly cost the Rams. He averaged just 2 yards per carry on a massive 24 carry workload, and he added 20 yards on 3 receptions. If he is the starter next week, and that seems very likely, you know that San Francisco is going to come after the ball every chance they get. The star of the show, along with Matt Stafford, was my little Cooper Kupp, who was absolutely spectacular and simply could not be covered, which has been the norm for him basically all season. On his 11 target, he reeled in 9 balls for 183 yards, and that touchdown, he averaged over 20 yards a catch. Odell Beckham Jr. and Tyler Higbee complimented him really well. They combined for 120 yards on their 15 looks, and there were just too many options for Stafford, and he was able to utilize them all. Los Angeles absolutely harassed Brady for the opening 2 frames. They forced him off target and they hit him often. They were an impenetrable wall up front as well, leaving little room for Tampa to run through. I do not put the blame on the Rams defense for fading late in the game, as they were gassed having to be on the field so long, as fumble after fumble by their offense put them in horrible situations. All they could do was try to hold on. A sack fumble and a recovery by Von Miller nearly put this away at the beginning of the 4th quarter, but they had a poor snap to Matthew Stafford and they turned it right back over to Tampa. Aaron Donald was an absolute unstoppable force. He had a pair of tackle for losses, he had a sack, and 3 quarterback hits. When you pair that all-world talent with Leonard Floyd and Von Miller, it becomes too much even for that elite Tampa Bay offensive line to handle. LA's secondary was smart and disciplined for most of this game, and they blanketed the keys to the Bucs attack in both Gronk and Evans. Every single yard that they gave up was hard fought. To the coaching and the special teams, and to start, I really loved the aggressiveness from Sean McVay for most of this game, but I think there's still something to be said about eating the clock away, and I felt like there were multiple opportunities here to try and do that a little bit more. I admit that they were going absolutely nowhere on the ground, and it's likely that McVay just felt that it was not in the realm of possibilities, but it did end up almost costing the Rams. I also think there had to be a conversation about holding on to the dang football. After the first fumble by Cam Akers right before halftime, that needed to be the only conversation worth having with such a lead. I am not sure if it was a lack of focus, if it was bad luck, maybe ferocity and desperation on Tampa Bay's end, but to have 4 fumbles in the last 31 minutes of the game, that is ludicrous. The Rams also just lacked that killer instinct that is so necessary, especially in the NFL playoffs, and not having that can come back to bite you. You look at a team like Tampa Bay and what they do well, and to get them on the ropes like LA had them, and then to let them come back into this game, you need to take a deep and hard look at yourself when you talk about not only the coaching staff, but the players as well. You have to want to finish strong, and as strong as you started it. They did not have that, and it nearly was an epic let-up. The answer to my questions coming in ended up being pretty simple. Brady ran out of magic and could not get enough to pull it out, while Stafford's star burns ever brighter, and it earns him a chance at a Super Bowl trip. Tom Brady came oh so close to putting up not only a 28-3 comeback on his resume, but a 27-3 one as well. The heart and the fight that Tampa showed was impressive, though it ultimately fell short. The Rams are going to have to take a hard look at themselves in the mirror if they want a trip to the Super Bowl. They were lucky to not fully blow this lead, and they are not going to get away with turning the ball over like that twice. The 49ers, I think, are much less a tall task than the Bucs are for me, but they certainly can get the win with how their defense played in Lambeau. I'm going to take the Rams to represent the NFC as they beat down San Francisco 31-20. Unless, of course, Trey Lance starts. Then it's the Rams 31-27. And that's all I got for you guys for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, you learned something. If you disagree with any of my takes, please drop that down below in the comment section. I want to be able to engage with you. That is what this is all about. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Please consider liking and subscribing. Your support is so very appreciated. It means the world to me and it helps me out a ton. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham O'Pass, and we'll see you next time.